A Kitsune in Remnant by Red Devil 360, Chapter 20, Showdown, Part 3. They gaped. How could they not? Death was not a mystery to those gathered in the headmaster's office, but that was a slaughter. They had at first been worried for Kitsune as the mass of bodies threw themselves forward at the Ambu, only for him to turn it around and just mow through them. It started with just his blades until he surrounded himself. At first they imagined he'd made a mistake, even with Grim. You don't want yourself to be surrounded. But then he'd begun with his jutsus and shown them it was his plan all along. You can't miss if the target is all around you. More and more shinobi were simply cut down by Kitsune as if they were nothing unknown full well alone they were a match for the students, maybe even the school faculty. Abruptly it came to an end when the large S-rank bashed Kitsune back towards the clearing edge. By then less than a fifth of the army remained standing to combat him. Instead of charging back into the fray, he'd backed off and disappeared into the foliage. The remaining army had followed, and the drone tracked them through the trees. It was quiet for a moment as the battle met a lull. That was until Heat's signatures suddenly began to disappear one by one, or even groups at a time. All the drone ever saw was a light flash of heat before it vanished again. This continued for a time until the flash was suddenly intercepted by another. Judging by the protected combat, it must have been one of the S-ranked. With the heat signature possessing some from the outline, they were able to witness the fast-paced and violent that erupted between the two prior to one ultimately came out on top. It wasn't clear who it was until the entire canopy glowed a furious red and the camera switched back to normal to show the explosion. The wait was a few minutes long this time as they watched the smoke slowly dissipate over the trees, the explosion somehow not startling a forest fire in the aftermath. But then a body was thrown at the tree line and back into the clearing after it stopped rolling and got to its feet. They realized it was Kitsune who had been tossed. "What have you done?" he yelled, suppressing the spectators. The large one grinned large enough they could see it on the camera, swinging his blade onto his shoulders. "Notice that finally." "Notice what?" "The other Jinchuriki?" Kitsune questioned with a surprising emotion in his voice. Fear. This time the large one laughed loudly and cruelly. "Don't worry, brat, you'll be joining them soon enough," he replied. "Who are they talking about?" Ruby questioned, worried as they watched Kitsune bellow out in pure rage and charge at the pair. They all turned to Winter, who herself had gone pale, with a hand gone up to her mouth in shock. Further worried the group as they witnessed one so composed, but be put off so thoroughly by just a few lines spoken. It again is not my place to say, only that, if true, may spell disaster not just for Naruto, but the elemental nations as a whole, perhaps even us," she muttered hurriedly. What will it be a disaster?" Ozpin pushed, but Winter merely shook her head. Numb. They turned their attention back to the fight as the trio, the shinobi, throwing everything at each other. Alone, one of these three was nothing worth an army. Together they could undoubtedly bring down a nation, and the size of their battle showed that. Large construction of the elements dueled between them, stunning them at such casual display of power and control, or when they came together the very air seemed to ripple at the strength and speed of their blows. How do you become this strong? It shouldn't be possible, we smuttered in a trance. There was no answer to give, as Kitsune was once again forcefully disengaged. He appeared to himself for a little time as the pair opposite him left him to his devices. Apparently content he wouldn't try and leave, Kitsune eventually held out his right hand. Blue energy gathered in a ball. Chakra, they realized. That was pure chakra, but Kitsune continued, and a ring appeared around the ball. Then it turned white, and finally 4 blades solidified, a massive 4-pointed shuriken made of chakra. The power in such a small construct must be immense. They were not the only ones to clue onto that either. The two S-rank creating a gargantuan firestorm of their own to run down their former ally. To their further shock, instead of turning away, he chucked the jutsu at the firestorm. The resulting explosion encompassed the drone, and the steam turned to static. "No! Get the drone back!" Pyra yelled. "I can't. The explosion must have knocked it out for a little while. We'll have to wait." Winter snapped once again on her scroll. "Hey guys," Nora called over the window. "Look!" She pointed out past the campus and into the forests. There on the horizon they could see an orange and red fireball, easily larger than the school and the plateau it sat on. "Holy shit!" Yang breathed. No one in the room at a point to correct her language. "How?" Weiss muttered again. They watched entranced as the fire died down, leaving behind a large black stain on the forest and a cloud of debris and smoke in the sky and buried area. "Feed is back," Winter announced quietly. Even she was stunned at the power being thrown around. They turned back to the screen as the static continued for a moment before revealing the aftermath. There was nothing. It was all ash, the ground charred black, and the trees forever lifeless. They watched as the drone surveyed the ground, searching for life, until a mound shifted and a man sat up without warning with a loud cough, dusting the ash off himself, revealing the mask and armor underneath the layers. Kitsune appeared to gather himself, creating a clone to wrap any wounds he had taken, one clearly on his arm. As he looked around the area, the break lasted a few minutes, thankfully long enough for Kitsune to fully bandage himself, as the large one, apparently blue, appeared and slammed his blade down in the place where Kitsune was once sitting. But the blade wasn't like one they'd ever seen. For one, it had scales and also a mouth. Putting that aside, the second one behind Kitsune, after throwing several shuriken at the Ambu, he was tall and lean, with dark long hair. "All right, brat, you had my attention before. Now you've just gone and made me angry," the blue one growled. In his hand the sword shivered. "A peculiar jutsu you use, Naruto. It won't work a second time," the lean one added, softly from behind Kitsune. A beat followed before once more, and for hopeful the last time, the three clashed. Battered and wounded as they were, all three were noticeably weakened and slightly sluggish, but still leagues above any in the room. "He's dancing," Ruby whispered as they witnessed the Kenjutsu duel between the large one and Kitsune. "It's so beautiful." The skill and the two demonstrated awed and horrified them. They made it look so easy, as if the battle had been planned ahead. The clashes, the parries, the blocks. Finally, it came to an end when the lean one interfered, but this time Kitsune was pulled out his trump card, and he disappeared in a flash, reappearing behind the man as if he had always been there. And on it would go. Yellow flashes appeared and disappeared between the two S-rank, battering them as they tried to defend themselves. The room began to understand just how Kitsune had used it to wipe out armies. To their further surprise, the Kitsune fighting them was dispelled in a cloud of smoke as the blue one got a lucky hit in. The real one appeared in front of the man while another group attacked the lean one to likely distract him. Kitsune grabbed the blade to their confusion, only for the blade to gradually turn gray, almost like stone. Kitsune wrenched the blade away from the when the transformation was complete, shoving another blue ball into the large man's chest, throwing him spiraling away. Not a moment too soon, as the lean one reappeared with a cut on Kitsune's neck until he was re-engaged properly. The battle wore on, clearly to the detriment of all combatants. Jutsu and blows continued to be traded, but exhaustion was clear, Kitsune being forced to retreat when he was knocked down onto his back by a slab of water, the camera locking onto his face when he appeared a short distance away. His face! His mask had broken slightly, showing a single red, glaring eye and part of his cheek. But why was his eye red? "Sharingan?" Winter muttered in shock, staring at the three tomoe lazily spinning. "Like the Uchiha have?" Blake wondered, and Winter only nodded. "Kisame? Why can I sense chakra going to Uzumaki's eyes?" the lean one asked softly, head cocked forward. The large one appeared to inspect him from across the distance and recoiled slightly. "Sharingan?" he too muttered in slight shock as he witnessed the three tomoe spin slightly where Naruto's blue eyes once sat. The lean one twitched. "Sasuke's?" he questioned. "Yes, I took his Sharingan," Naruto admitted with a shrug, only happy with the short respite. "And what are you going to do about it?" Itachi, take it back. Sasuke took the person I held above all others from me, so I decided to take the thing that mattered the most to him. He revealed with sweeping arms and a bitter tone. The good thing about having a demon sealed inside you is that he could incorporate the DNA to my own. The Sharingan is as much mine as it was Sasuke's. Demon? What demon? Pyra asked, concerned and scared about the implication. Once more eyes turned to Winter, but she stayed quiet, revealing nothing. Now, how about we finish this? Kitsune spoke. As the three engaged one final time, storm clouds gathered in the periphery of the drone camera. Only out of the window there weren't any. It was entirely situated around the three battling, or rather around Kitsune. After some time, Naruto voluntarily backed away, hands blurring. I really have to hand it to your brother for this one, Itachi, he yelled and clapped his hands together. For a beat, nothing happened other than the storm increasing in intensity. As the lightning crackled again, a truly enormous clawed hand of lightning thrust it out of the cloud cover, almost appearing to grab the edge. Another followed, and together they pulled a large mussel through the sky until the whole head of a fox with rabbit ears created itself. Its eyes glowed a familiar red. Whirlpool technique, raging hammer, nine tails, Kitsune yelled, and the screen cut off. No static, just nothing. They turned to the window again as they witnessed the explosion somehow dwarf the previous one. This had to be the end, right? I don't know how you're going to explain this to the council, Oz, Crow muttered. Alcohol long forgotten. This battle is over. I've called us a bullhead, Winter announced, and the group hurriedly left the room. Line break. Naruto treaded through the smoke that covered the clearing, searching for any sign of either Itachi or Kisame's survival or death. He was at his limit well and truly. That last jutsu had taken most of what remained of his chakra. It was expected with one as large as that, having to saturate the very air enough to cause a storm was beyond even many elite Jonin. Having to have done it at the end of such a trying battle put him on his last legs. He was weak, he was tired, and he was still poisoned. Although the fox had managed to avert the major adverse effects, he could still feel it draining him, sapping his strength, and preventing the fox from healing his wounds. He needed to contact the Kages, ask them about the other Jinchuriki, and if his hypotheses were true all along. He prayed Kisame was lying. He prayed to every deity that would listen in this moment. There were also the matter that if it was true, why had no one told him? Why did they lie and say all was well? The Akatsuki were quiet and the nations were at peace, they said. Had he been betrayed? Doubtful as it was, Naruto stopped and gazed at the prone form that appeared in the smoke. As he approached, the body became more clear, or clear as it could be. Burned and destroyed as it was, gathered from the ready missing arm, it was Kisame, or what remained of him. There was no doubt about it. He was dead. So where was Itachi? The answer came when the smoke to the left of him glowed menacingly as the firebolt rushed at him. Using the leftover water on the ground, Naruto swiftly formed a shield of water in front of him and absorbed the fire without difficulty. Itachi himself appeared behind Naruto, wielding a single kunai. The Anbu turned and palmed the inside of Itachi's forearm, pushing the blade to the side. His other elbow came up to slam into the Uchiha's temple. Undaunted, Itachi launched another attack, ninking the blonde on the leg as he stepped back, and then forward again to throw his own punch into the man's side and a kick into his ribs. The blackhead reverted to angle of his kunai and plunged backwards into Naruto's unprotected underarm. At the top of the ribs, Naruto hissed in pain and grabbed the offending arm around the wrist and jabbed the elbow, breaking it easily and wrenching him forward into a knee into the solar plexus. Bending Itachi over it with his free arm, he pulled out the kunai and unheaded by the blood, and went to stab Itachi in the back only for a foot to hook around his ankle, pulling him both down into a clatter. Naruto landed a heavy uppercut on Itachi's chin, throwing the older man off and away. He stood in a crouch and launched himself towards him, tackling him back to the ground. Before he could capitalize, Itachi shifted his legs under Naruto's chest and kicked up into the air and rolled to his feet. A flash of yellow, and Itachi grunted at the burning sensation in his sternum. He shakingly looked down and saw the tip of Naruto's katana peeking out from his skin. Just above that sat a Hiraishin seal burned into the remains of his shirt. He slumped to his knees with a huff of relief as the blade retracted and Naruto walked around into his view, his Sharingan deactivated. I must say, Naruto-kun, you have truly grown. I'm sure your parents are very proud, Itachi mused. The man in question shrugged. I wouldn't know. I've never met them. Naruto stared at the Uchiha for a moment before stepping forward and removing the bandages around his eyes. The two pale eyes stared back. You're blind? He questioned. Itachi nodded, seeing no reason to continue hiding it. Yes, 2 years now. Byproduct of using the Mangekyo. I imagine if you ever unlock it, you being a Jinchuriki will limit the downside if not entirely eliminated. Naruto hummed in thought, still not sheathing his blade. For what it's worth, I never wanted that for Sasuke. He was meant to kill me and regain the honor that my clan lost, Itachi offered. Naruto shrugged again. Whatever you did to him broke him. Sasuke was mad. That much was evident. He couldn't be allowed to live. It made that mistake once. I wasn't going to do it twice, Naruto replied. Itachi simply nodded in understanding, not talking anymore as his body got weaker. A moment later, slumping over completely, Naruto created a clone and sent it over to Kisume's body to retrieve the man's head, as he did the same with Itachi, making sure to burn both bodies entirely. He retrieved a scroll from his pouch along with a pre-inked brush and began writing a rather strongly worded report to Kakashi, both about the Akatsuki attack and the defeat of Kisame and Itachi, as well as the mystery of the other Jinchuriki states. Sealing both heads inside, he rolled it up and summoned the small messenger toad, who gave him a worried look once he got a good look at his summoner. I'm fine. Just get this to Hokage, please. He muttered tiredly, and the toad took the scroll and disappeared in a plume of smoke. Standing shakingly and slowly moved towards the edge of the clearing, with the adrenaline finally leaving his body. All the cuts, broken bones, and bruises made themselves known rather noisily. Eventually he couldn't walk anymore and slumped against the burnt-out tree, sliding down until his knees hit the ground. Knowing he was going no further, he shifted himself so that his arms rested on a knee, while his katana, held loosely in his grip, was across his lap. All right, Kurama, I'm done, he sighed in his head. No worries, kid. You fought well. Itachi was right. I'm sure your parents were proud of you, the fox replied rather softly for him. With a sigh of relief that the battle was finally over, he let his eyes close and his head to rest against the burnt wood behind him. A few moments of peace washed over him before the telltale sound of a bullhead grew louder and louder. I'm not going to fight, Naruto said into his head. I wouldn't expect you to. Not that you're in any state to anyway. The poison is still in your system, and it's not leaving until your own genes can take more of the workload from me. Kurama answered in agreement. Naruto chuckled painfully, only opening his eyes when the bullhead engines cut off and its passengers disembarked a few meters in front of him. Both RBY and Periwinkle were there, looking a mix of worried, mad, and terrified at once. Ospen and Glenda followed after them, and finally Winter and Crow. The group stopped a meter or two in front of him, but neither said a word to the other. Naruto chuckled. So that escalated quickly, huh? He joked to fill the silence. No one answered. Rude. Naruto glanced at Crow, hand wrapped around his sword, and the tense posture of the other three adults. With a sigh, he painfully choked his katana at their feet. You can relax, Bronwyn. I'm done fighting today, he spoke tiredly. Crow's lips pressed themselves into a thin line, but a nod from Ospen, and he did as offered. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for deceiving you, truly, Naruto apologized. How do we know you aren't lying again? How can we trust you? It was Yang who spoke up. Why would I lie? Look at me. I have nothing left to give. As for trust, that's for you to decide. You won't be the first friends I have lost. I already have too few remaining anyways. Naruto replied. Why do you? Blake was next to ask. Why do I lie? Orders are orders, Miss Belladonna. He shrugged and immediately regretted it when it jostled his injuries. Was it real? Was all of it a ploy to gain our trust, to build a layer of armor around yourself so that we wouldn't suspect you? Pyra's next question. Poor girl seemed as heartbroken as Ruby. Naruto sighed and hung his head. It was real. I swear on my blood as an Uzumaki, not having to worry about fighting, war, killing. I have loved many times here, and the words I have left for you, I meant every part of it. Naruto coughed violently, then, hacking up a glob of blood underneath his mask, he sighed as his body relaxed again, and he opened his eyes again after clenching them shut. The others twitched slightly at the sight of the almost lack of a soul behind them. I'm just so tired of it all, the death, the killing. I've given so many souls to the Shinigami in my short time as a shinobi, more than more than people and many ever even met in real life. Being with you, it was like a breath of fresh air after being underground for so long, he whispered, making the group strain to hear him. After a beat of silence, Ruby crept forward and knelt down beside the Ambu, slowly reaching up to grab the edge of his mask. Naruto didn't resist as she pulled it off, revealing the teen's face fully for the first time. Ruby's hands came up again and lightly touched his cheek. "You have whiskers," she whispered in slight glee at finally discovering what he looked like. Naruto smiled slightly. "You never fail to make people smile, Ruby Rose," he muttered in return. He finally turned to face both Winter and Ozpin, who were quietly watching the proceeding. "I'm in no position to fight further. I willingly submit myself into your custody, Headmaster," he announced, eyes flickering as a wave of exhaustion passed over him. Ozpin nodded. "Very well, Kitsune. You'll be put under guard, but we'll treat you in the infirmary," he replied. "My name is Naruto. Use it," he spoke before unconsciousness finally claimed him. End of chapter 20.